3 million Australians will receive a 7.1% increase to their HECS debt.
More than 3 million Australians will have to stump up for a big jump in HECS debt from tomorrow. That's when student loans rise in line with inflation.
They just can't keep pretending that the student loan system is not broken.
The current debt stands at more than $74 billion. Yes, that is a lot of money.
I look to Parliament, full of members who studied for free.
And it is time the government stepped up.
A whole generation is now questioning whether it's worth going to uni. Between skyrocketing debt, a cost of living crisis and a housing market stacked against us, we're faced with a difficult decision. Do we continue with our degrees? And more difficult questions like, are some students being disadvantaged more than others? And of course the question, is it worth going to uni?
Most students don't want to click through MyGov and find out just how much they owe. Many are dealing with an inflated 7.1 indexation rate by just pretending that it doesn't exist. HECS fees are starting to impact our borrowing power in a housing market that's already out of reach. Will our repayments ever catch up with ballooning indexation?
If it costs so much, is university actually worth doing? You need a degree to become a doctor or a lawyer, but what about other fields like the creative industries, business and management, or construction that technically require no certification?
In this program, we'll hear from students that owe ridiculous amounts, young people paying their debts forward and dreaming of owning a house, because we want to know, if it's not worth going to uni, what are we doing here?
The way we see HECS, or the way we see debt, needs a bit of a rethink. For instance, let's just say if students were allowed to go to university for free, so they didn't pay any course fee, so it was fully subsidised by the government. A lot of people would see that as government spending. I think that needs a bit of a rethink, and we need to see it as sort of government investment.
Do you know how much you owe?
I think by the end it'll be about 34,000.
Does that do you worry about getting a house or anything like that after it being treated as bad debt?
Ooh.
See?
I'm not too sure. I think there's more problems with buying houses than just HECS at the moment.
Roughly 40 grand.
Yeah, when I last checked 2 weeks ago, sadly it was 35k.
Wow.
Not terrible, but not good.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. You guys worried about that at all?
Not too much.
We're sort of just drowning in our own assignments right now. It's a problem for next month.
After I'm done with uni, then I'll worry about it. Yeah. If I worry about it now, it's just gonna hurt my life. If I worry about it now.
Do you know how much you guys owe in HECS at all?
Yeah, I've got about 30 grand.
Yeah, mine will be up there as well.
Are you still wanting to push through with your degrees though? Because you've gotten this far, right?
Yeah, it's not stopping me, but it is scary.
I don't think people realise quite how much of an impact a $40,000 loan has on your borrowing power when you're trying to get a house or an apartment or a unit. And I guess that's where my banking experience comes in, is I've actually seen that and I'm like, ooh, there's going to be a lot of people who struggle here.
Gemma Taylor is a business graduate. Because of her ambitions to own a home, she paid off over $45,000 in HECS debt all up front.
Hi. Part of going to uni was that pressure. My family are quite well educated, and when I say that, I mean a lot of them have bachelor's degrees. So the trades and all of the other qualifications you can get are not really relevant in my family because none of us have had it. So I guess the university thing was, part of my context in knowing that that's what my family have done, and so that's what naturally I got pushed into.
You did pay off your HECS in one big payment. What kind of prompted you to pay it off in that way?
My HECS was going up by I think $3,500. So I thought to myself, maybe if I pay it off now, I'll save the money that I'm gonna just have to pay off later. And I was fortunate enough to be in the position that I could. And I know so many people aren't. So I understand that is completely off the cards for a lot of people.
So how did we get here? Before 1973, students paid fees for university, but 75 to 80% of students were exempt from the cost through scholarships, specifically Commonwealth and Teachers College scholarships. Fast forward to 1973, and the Whitlam government abolishes university fees, starting a blissful period between the early 70s and late 80s where unis were funded without any student contribution. Enter the Higher Education Administration Charge, an upfront fee of $250, around $740 in today's money, for all students regardless of degree, setting the stage for the loan program we know today. Following recommendations from a funding committee led by former Premier Neville Wran, the Higher Education Contribution Scheme, or HECS, was introduced on the 1st of January 1989.
Aren't the universities already paid for?
Well, yes, they are.
Aren't they funded out of taxation?
Yes, they are.
So you're asking people to pay twice?
The scheme had one rate of payment of $1,800 per year. HECS had several modifications in the 90s until the Higher Education Loans Program, HELP, was introduced in 2003. Under the program, universities could charge students HECS help up to a maximum rate based on the field of study, or bands. A national priorities band was established, reducing fees for those studying in priority fields such as teaching and nursing. Students in these fields could get 50% off their HECS help repayments for up to 5 years if they worked a job related to their studies. The National Priorities Band was discontinued in 2013, with the removal of HECS help benefit for all graduates. This brings us to the Job Ready Graduates program of 2020, which aimed to incentivise students to make more job-relevant choices that lead to more job-ready graduates by reducing the student contribution in areas of expected employment, growth and demand.
Government is slashing the price of some university degrees and adding an extra 100,000 places by 2030. Cost of more popular degrees will be going up though.
But for people like me studying humanities, this feels like a financial penalty for studying areas not deemed valuable by the government. The Job Ready Graduates package had a significant impact on students, particularly for students like us studying degrees within the humanities, with student contributions increasing by 113% for humanities and communication degrees. For example, a student studying humanities or social science courses in 2020 would owe $6,684 per year, compared to $14,500 per year in 2021, more than doubling their contributions. With the new package, students who don't pass 50% of their enrolled units across a year are not eligible for a HECS help loan. In July this year, Education Minister Jason Clare released a report on Australian universities. This is the interim report of the Universities Accord Review. The report has confirmed that the Job Ready Graduates package will be scrapped, including the 50% passing rule. But for those of us that have been caught in the middle of this package, it feels too little, too late.
What can the government do to bring this pressure down if indexation is set by the market?
Well, there's a number of things they can do. I mean, first of all, in an ideal world, what they could do is essentially just fully subsidise any future students. So in other words, they don't pay any HECS debt, and they could even just write off all HECS debt. That would ease the burden of young people trying to get into the housing market. I know exactly how hard it is. It's very, very difficult, and if you've accumulated quite a large HECS debt, then, as I was saying before, it affects your credit score. I know just through my own personal finances, I'm outlaying a couple of $100s a month pretty easily in paying off my HECS. But at the same time, the government wants an educated workforce, so you can't have it both ways.
Throughout your degree and between your two degree changes, was your HECS debt ever a consideration?
Not even close. I graduated high school in 2014. I started looking through degrees and I'm like, okay, I could do teaching. That became I might do that. I looked into chemical engineering because I like solving problems and maths and science interested me. And I'm like, actually, I like that. I started doing that, did that for 6 years, and 9 years later, I'm no longer doing that. I am a third-year education student. Racked up a fair bit of debt, HECS-wise. At the end of 2014, start of 2015, interest rates are low. Fast forward 8 years, interest rates are starting to rise. Fast forward 9 years, they're really rising, and that becomes much more of an issue.
We were wondering, is logging onto MyGov and seeing that number and seeing if it meets your expectations something you would be comfortable doing?
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
I will say now, before I do log in, as long as it's below 100,000, I'm pretty sure I can cover things. Now, having never done this before, I've logged into MyGov, and do I need to go to the ATO office, or where do I go? Oh wow, there we go. Yep, loan accounts. 81,000, I'm pretty sure.
Seeing Sam check his HECS debt, we thought we would check ours, considering we're studying the humanities. And I'm at $28,307. Which is alright, but it's still not great.
It's alright when you compare it to what I have now. This semester, so hopefully this is finalised now, indexation aside, it's 53,532.
How does it make you feel?
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
Pretty it almost makes me feel irresponsible. I'm like, have I made a stupid decision?
You know, being 2 years out of school, being 20 years old and owing $30,000, well, almost $30,000 just as it is to me quite scary. How did you go, Zali?
Oh no.
57,900.
Yikes. How does that make you feel?
Like swearing. That I probably shouldn't on camera.
Why is it so high?
Yeah,
if you're doing the same degree as Pete and I.
I transferred from a different uni.
But it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, doesn't it? Because it's like obviously the government's trying to incentivise you to study certain things, and if you don't do that, you get sort of financially punished for it. But at the same time, I feel like, am I not going to contribute meaningfully to society? Because I've done this, you know, I'm trying to pursue this career that hasn't really been deemed valuable enough.
But more than just ballooning HECS debt, the university experience has changed a lot since our parents went to uni. But because we're kids, we don't know what it was like, so we asked them.
Compared to what it's like for students now, I'd say completely different. You had to go to lectures and you had to go to tutes because otherwise you won't know what's going on.
Basically all on campus, there was no online.
Yeah, there was a lot of social groups happening. There always seemed to be a lot of people at uni. People would sprint to the library, and most of those people who sprint would be the mature age students. You'd have to put your name down on a waiting list for these books, and they usually were loaned out at an hour at times. So you wrote relevant pages you would need for your assignment, and then you got to try and photocopy them before the short loan time.
There was a debt to pay associated with doing university, but it wasn't quite as large as what is now.
The government didn't use that to incentivise and try to push people to do certain degrees over other ones. Computers is the biggest change, and I think that's created people to be more disconnected from each other.
I think the impact of screens and computers has led to a reduction in the amount of social interaction that students would have.
Could you tell me a little bit about sort of how life has changed in terms of university education between what you see when you went to university and now with students going to university?
A couple of things. Firstly, I would say that the quality of education which students receive, particularly the classroom, the teaching, has improved significantly. There's no doubt about that. It's been a combination of technology, it's been a combination of expectations of universities and expectations of students. Students are working a lot more now. It's not that university has changed so much, but life has changed.
There's $80,000, $50,000 debts. They're big numbers. If indexation is here to stay, we heard in news about indexation. Should we be concerned about this?
What we're in at the moment in Australia, and this isn't a university issue, this is a national issue, that inflation is climbing faster than wages. It's a national productivity issue, and that is where it's becoming challenging for students as it is for many other people in the community.
The Job Ready Graduates package is something that was, of course, introduced in 2020. That changed the debts a little bit between degrees, so humanities, of course, increased quite a fair bit. Are you optimistic? So we talked about the Jason Clare review, the university's Accord report that they've delivered earlier this year. Are you confident the review into universities might perhaps reevaluate what Job Ready Graduates has changed in terms of fees?
The Accord has been quite clear that there will be other changes to Job Ready Graduates, and it's certainly recognising the debts that are being incurred by students. How it will deal with that, I think it's been very closely held. Right across the country, there were certainly imbalances in what came out of Job Ready Graduates.
In that same semester where my course was cut, they introduced putting the creative industries at a higher price point than it ever had been. And we all thought that it was going to go up to that price. Mine didn't, because I had enrolled in semester 1 of 2020. You were lucky. I was lucky because it would have been almost 10 grand dearer to do it
It was something absolutely ridiculous.
If the government wanted students to stop studying the arts by ballooning HECS fees, it certainly didn't work. The Department of Education found enrolments in creative arts degrees increased by 13% from 2008 to 2020, and the Job Ready Graduates package didn't have a huge impact afterwards. What it did do was further disadvantage women and First Nations students, who are overrepresented in the arts, an issue that Jason Clare raised in a speech to Parliament earlier this year. 85% of undergraduates who completed their degrees in 2008 found full-time employment within 4 months, and this decreased to 79% in 2021. This number is predicted to continue to decline. But despite the fact undergraduate employment is decreasing, enrolment rates are continuing to rise. So, if university isn't the best way to enter the workforce, what is? We place so much importance on having a degree because it seems like the best ticket into a well-paying industry. But this isn't always the case. There are cheaper alternatives to university, such as TAFE or apprenticeships in fields like construction and mining. These are often tuition-free and can lead to high-paying jobs. Salaries for mining jobs range between $70,000 and $400,000, while communications jobs range between $60,000 and $160,000. While the problem is not that some jobs get paid better than others, the problem actually is that some degrees with unimpressive graduate salaries are being disproportionately loaded with bad debt.
But are the trades really easier? Former construction worker Lincoln Etherington says it's not that simple.
So do you think that you would ever go back to construction?
If I can avoid it, no, I wouldn't ever want to go back to that. Most of the high-paying trade jobs are away from your family, in the middle of Australia or Western Australia and all that, in the mines. So you lose out on your family. It's not as easy as they say.
Did you consider going to university?
The thing that stopped me from going to choose uni was that it was just such a high cost.
We've been talking to so many students who said, I would have made a different decision if I knew going into this that my HECS was going to be this much, or that. Well, I don't know if that's what you would have done.
The tricky bit is when you start, you don't really, when you're 18, you don't really think about, well, I certainly didn't, how this is going to affect my credit score when I'm applying for a loan to a bank. And then what happens if you enroll and it's $600 and then the next year suddenly becomes $800 and then the next year becomes $1,000? Well, you think, well, I've already completed the first year, then I've completed the second year and my course fees are increasing. Like, is it worth me actually dropping out, or should I just finish the degree?
The COVID-19 pandemic caused unprecedented disruption to the university sector, sending lectures and tutorials online and practically hitting pause on the social lives of students. We asked current students and graduates what their pandemic learning experience was like and the impact it's had on campus life.
It was so difficult. Uni's meant to be such a social experience. Everyone's meant to have a really good time. And when you literally have 2 weeks of face-to-face contact and then it goes completely online and half the people don't turn on their cameras or don't participate, verbally in class, you don't get a chance to know anyone.
I look back at COVID and I look at the amount I paid for my course, and I was doing it all in my living room, and it was really just lecturers reading off slides. It was a very expensive thing to do, but I think it's going to be worthwhile in terms of development.
I usually break it up into pre-COVID and post-COVID. There are a lot of similarities, don't get me wrong, but there is a lot that we used to do that we don't now. The university is structured different. There is a lot more come on campus, go back home here at Callaghan, whereas pre-COVID there was a lot of come to campus, stay on campus all day, and then go home. So there was a lot more social life, whereas these days there's a little less of that.
And a bit of a big final question, is it worth going to uni?
I think it's highly dependent on circumstances. getting a degree is worthwhile, but also going to TAFE is worthwhile, doing a trade is worthwhile. There's so many other alternatives that are not as nearly as expensive.
Look into the fine print, see if they can get scholarships and whatnot so that HECS debt is less of an issue.
The opportunities that university provides you, not just while you're at university, but for the future, your future career, your future professional and personal opportunities and your earning capacity are so considerable that it's certainly worth coming to university.
Is it worth going to uni?
In short, absolutely. When you come to uni, you meet different people from different backgrounds, you learn about life, you get exposed to different points of view. We need to think about those sorts of aspects about going to university. So it is absolutely worth going to university.